When the cows got loose. The day the cows got loose, Granny was taking her weekly soak in the tub, and Grampy was knitting the last row on his purple scarf. The day the cows got loose, Ma was out back chopping a load of wood, and Pa was mending a hole in the roof of the chicken coop. Good old Calliope was burying a bone by the back door. The day the cows got loose, I was hanging upside down in the old apple tree, dreaming about how to get famous someday. Pa said since I watched the cows cut loose, I could round 'em up, all 26 of 'em. I let out a big sigh so Pa could hear and moseyed over to Mrs. Henshaw's. I knew Alberta and Betty would be there. They love Mrs. Henshaw's cabbages. On our way back home, we passed Mr. Andrews' place. The chairs were missing from his front porch. Seems Zora had something to do with it. Who'd have thought? Next morning, while I was frying up a couple of old Gilly's eggs, Pa got a call from Mrs. McGrath. I could hear her shouting from clear across the room. He held out the phone, looked at me, and said, "Ida May, Mrs. McGrath wants to take her morning swim." I cooked up those eggs, then skipped down to Mrs. McGrath's with Callie at my heels. Sure enough, there was Candy and Dottie doing ballet smack dab in the middle of Mrs. McGrath's pool. "Looky here, Cal. Come on, we're going swimming." I held my nose and jumped in. Toward evening, I got a call from Aunt Mary. Cousin William was at the swamp today, and so were Yolanda, Ellie, Fanny, Zena, and Greta. Sakes alive, Kelly, I got to see this. So I hopped on my bike and headed for the swamp. Well, I'll be. That night, I fell asleep and dreamed about Hildegard and Winifred eating their way through the Howard's haystack. They had blown up like balloons and were floating over the cornfield. The next day I got up before the roostabout and whistled for Callie. But Hildy doesn't like corn. She likes clover, I said as we tumbled over to the Howards. No sign of Hildegard and Winifred. By the time we got to the Nielsen's farm, where the sweetest clover grows, the sun was rubbing its sleepy eyes, and I'll be those little heifers were already gone. So we wandered over to the Siversons, and there they were, hopping in the haystacks. This is gooder'n grits. We weren't eating like I reckoned. After taking a few jumps myself, I hauled those zany creatures home. That afternoon, while shooting a game of marbles with Grampy on the front porch, we got another call, this time from Mr. Dewey. Says there was a car setting in front of his house. Seems that Irene, Jeanette, Violet, Katie, Lucy, and Ursula were up to something. Before Pa even hung up that phone, he was saying, "Ida May, best get to the Deweys." Callie and I dallied on down to the Deweys. Well, knocked me down. Spent the best part of the afternoon trying to get those cows out of that car. When they finally tuckered out, I herded them home. The following night, right about the time I was settling into a good game of checkers with Granny, you guessed it, the phone rang. "Howdy, Mr. Simpson." "Gee, I'm sorry, Mr. Simpson." "She'll be right down, Mr. Simpson." Granny let out a big sigh. She had just kinged her first checker. I grabbed the lantern and stomped out the door. Seems Mr. Simpson had a troop of those critters roaming round his backyard. Saw them when he called this kitty in for the night. Scared the daylights out of him. Mad as I was at having my checker game disturbed, I couldn't help staring when I saw Minerva, Nellie, and Tilly tiptoeing across Mr. Simpson's clothesline, decked out in Mr. Simpson's clean sheets. Knew Tilly would follow the lantern. First thing she saw the night she was birthed. After that, no calls for 3 days. Pa started pacing and twisting his cap. "Ida May, enough of this clowning around," he said. "Turn off that Victrola and go find the last batch of bovine. "Aw, Pa," I said. I didn't want to interrupt my dancing, but I could tell he meant business. So Callie and I headed straight for the apple tree, where we do our best thinking. "Well, Callie, there's 26 cows that live in that there barn, and I rounded up 21. Who's left?" "There's Ophelia, Pauline, and Susie Q. They like the breeze beating down on their brows. Queenie and Renee. What in tarnation do they like, Callie?" Callie jumped up on the swing. "Shoot, dang," I said. "They like high places. Why didn't I think of that? Let's go get Pa." We hopped in Pa's truck and motored over to Ms. Romano's. When Pa caught sight of Ophelia, Pauline, Susie Q, Queenie, Renee, and Ms. Romano, he took off his cap, scratched his head, and said, "Now, don't that just beat all?" The day we finished rounding up the cows, on the first of July, Granny was taking her weekly soak in the tub, and Grampy was modeling his new purple scarf. Ma was out back stacking a load of wood, while Pa was in the chicken coop gathering eggs. As for me, I was hanging upside down in the old apple tree, dreaming about how to get famous someday.